Well, greetings and welcome to this week's Fireside Chat podcast. Second week that I've titled it this. So it used to be the weekly wrap. I think Fireside Chat podcast is the direction I want to go. So hope you are happy with that. So I'm starting a little late today, and that is because Tracy and I just had my daughter over with her very nice young boyfriend, I guess we can say. More on that later because there is one interesting part of the conversation that I think is interesting, and I will share about some of the topics that we talk about here, just for some perspective of the next generation. But before I get to that, I'll just this week I think it's probably makes the most sense for me to update you on a few of the things that I've been doing this week. You'll notice that I dropped a new Richard Dolan show, first of all. And that was just yesterday with my interview with Jim Goodall. I'll get to that in just a second. But the other thing that I've been doing, I've been uploading. Now I've gotten 2 sessions uploaded of what we're calling the JFK sessions. And those are it's actually one very extended interview that I did about a month ago, almost now, with researcher Philip Lavelle, who now is a membership at our site. So if you'll notice, I've uploaded 2 hours worth of that interview, and Philip has been interacting with a number of you who have provided comments about those interviews, their interview segments. There will be at least 2 more hours to share with you of those interviews. Philip and I, when we did it the first time, there was one segment that we were both not 100% happy with, and that had to do with really the whole autopsy and the botched, or the intentionally botched, I guess you could say, autopsy of President Kennedy. In fact, it was quite well done, but Philip wasn't quite happy with it. He felt he could have done better. And so what we ended up doing was just a few days ago, we sat down and did a whole new section on it. And it really turned out to be longer, of course. So I think that will be coming up. I've got to go through everything else that we have. I think that will be coming up either for session 3 or session 4. But I think session 3, and that actually could be session 3 and 4. He had a lot to say about it. This is just absolutely fascinating. The thing I just want to say about the significance of this interview is that, I mean, there's a lot of overlap among us who are interested in things like UFOs with things that like the JFK assassination and like 9/11 and a lot of other covert activities that have taken place in our world. I think most of us who've gotten into one of these things recognize that there are a number of other similarly deeply secretive, illegal types of activities that have been done that also affect our world. So I don't think it's really hard to convince most of the members of our site that the assassination of John F. Kennedy is really important. Even so, it occurred to me, particularly while talking with Philip, and then afterward, I ended up renting JFK by Oliver Stone, just because, that moment, that assassination to this day remains very relevant to the world that we are in. And I know it's more than 50 years ago, going on 60 years now. But when you garner what the latest research is on that assassination, and Philip really is one of the best people in the world to talk about that, you see how it's relevant to our day. I mean, here you have a situation where the president of the United States is assassinated in plain view, open sight of the entire world, the entire public, right there on display. And those assassins got away with it. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly how to manage the investigation. They knew exactly how to manage the formal investigation that is known as the Warren Commission. And that's power. That's power. And I remember it was during the 50th anniversary of the assassination. If I'm not mistaken, or was it the 40th? Golly, I can't remember now. Was it 2003 or 2013? Might have been 2003. That it was, what was Peter Jennings on? He was ABC. I think they did a 40th anniversary commemoration of the JFK assassination. And it occurred to me, they could never, ever do an open, honest discussion of that event as long as the people who killed Kennedy still had power. And in fact, they did. They still did. They were still vulnerable to prosecution if the truth of this were to come out. And so, of course, the amount of the insulting level of treatment of this by our official establishment to this day, by the mainstream media, by our political establishment, by our academic world is so infantile, so insulting, so bad. It's astonishing that they perpetrate the lies that they do, and here we are yet all these years later. So thank you, Philip, for this amazing extended interview. And I'll be releasing session 3, part 3 of that as soon as I can. Tracy and I will be driving tomorrow to see her mother for just a day and a half, 2 days. And I should be able to get a bit of work done while we are there. And I think there's a good chance that I'll be able to get part 3 of that interview up for you. These are still only available for members of this website. We have not yet elected to put these on YouTube, although I think it will happen probably later in the month, possibly debuting on November 22nd, which is, of course, the date of President Kennedy's assassination. So I think I may do it on that day. I may release part 1 and then start it then. But right now you're getting a preview of it all. You get to hear it first. Similarly, you're going to get to hear my interview that I just did a few days ago with, drumroll, wait for it, Chris Bledsoe. And let me tell you, so we're going to be doing a bit more interviews as well. Chris Bledsoe, this is an extraordinary case, and I think that he is a remarkable man. So if you're not familiar with this case, I mean, Bledsoe's case, in a way, I think I said this to him during the interview, which no one has heard this interview yet. I'll probably release this for you guys in the next day or 2. It's going to be very soon. But the thing about the Bledsoe case is it's like everyone knows about it and no one knows about it. I mean, very few people really understand a lot of the details that happened on multiple occasions to this man. So briefly, Chris Bledsoe, he's almost exactly my age. He's in his late 50s. And for many years at his home in North Carolina, has been the witness and has experienced a number of very, very incredible, bizarre, unusual, paranormal, UFO-related types of phenomena. And it's not just him, but his family, and not just his family, but many people, not a few, many people who have gone to visit his home. It's almost become like a mecca for UFO people, UFO researchers, have similarly experienced sightings of alien beings, UFOs, the bizarre burning tree phenomenon, and much more, like visions. And I don't know what's going on there. I have not been to his place. For a number of years, I was a bit hands off the Bledsoe case, and I had a lot of close researcher colleagues who have talked about this man and said that he's for real. And I wasn't disbelieving any of that, not at all. But I also didn't really feel a strong urge to throw myself into investigating him. I'm not sure why that's so. There's a natural caution that I think I've always had with a lot of UFO cases. And my attitude is I'm just happy to wait rather than jump in. But, years have gone by. The famous sighting that got Bledsoe put on the UFO map, as it were, was in January of 2007. That's almost 13 years ago. And we've learned a lot since that time. And one thing that I learned in talking with Chris about that particular case, that was the focus of our first hour. We'll be doing a second and I think a third hour to try to do the best to get a sense of everything he's gone through. But from that particular case, that's known as the River incident, the River sighting, where he was with his son and three other individuals at a river in North Carolina, where all of them had a remarkable encounter with UFOs. Bledsoe himself seemed to have missing time and had some very, very, very incredible sightings throughout that entire day. It's like, if it was just happening to one person without corroboration, you'd think, well, this is not credible. What can you do with this? But the thing about his sightings is that they seem incredible, and yet they are supported by large numbers of witnesses. And so I've not been able to dismiss it. And so because I can't dismiss it, I accept it. And I will tell you this, I really liked talking to him. So that interview will be, I'll drop that to the site. I should be able to do it tomorrow. And you're going to like this interview. I'm telling you. And the thing is, Bledsoe in 2012 was approached by a couple of Hollywood producers who said, we want to do your story, but we don't want you talking to the media while we're working on this. So that's 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago. And as far as I can see, nothing has happened. I don't know his deal with this project. I don't know what's going on with that. But for whatever reason, he's made a decision that he's going to start talking on a limited basis. And I'm honored that he wants me really to help open up his story to the world. So I'm taking this very seriously. And again, as I said, I'm going to release the first hour of this to this site alone. It will probably within a week or so. I'll probably put that out on YouTube, though, and KGRA Radio. I think this is something that really the world needs to hear. And I'm going to follow up with Chris later this week for hopefully we'll get 2 more hours in the tank, and we'll see how much more we want to go after that if we feel a need for any further interviews. So yeah, that's happening, and that's actually happened. And I'm quite pleased with this first hour that we did. I chatted informally with him for quite some time after that interview. And I'll just say I think his case is absolutely fascinating. And without a doubt, and this is not spilling any beans, but he's clearly gotten interest from some very prominent individuals in the scientific and government community. They know all about him, and they're quite interested in his case. So it's fascinating. So that's the JFK sessions with Philip Lavelle. There's the Chris Bledsoe interview. And then there was my interview just 2 days ago I did with Jim Goodall, and released that yesterday for Saturday. Normally, I like to save those interviews for Monday for the Richard Olin show, but I wasn't really in the position where I could do a live stream big picture. And I thought this is a good opportunity to put this excellent interview up. And my God, got a lot of great feedback, both on this site for the Goodall interviews, part 1 and 2. And then of course the YouTube page, which has part 1. Goodall's getting lots of love there, and he deserves it. What a guy. First of all, just personally, he mentioned his age. He's nearly 75, and it's really hard not to love this man. He's just so open, so refreshingly honest about things. And I really liked his old school attitude about, particularly when he talked with that officer in the Pentagon after he had lost his clearance because he wrote a book on the F-117 stealth fighter, co-authored with Bill Sweetman. Goodall walks in there. The officer who he knew said, yeah, too bad you weren't active duty when you wrote that book, because I'd have had you brought in for espionage. Goodall said, I threw my book down on his desk and said, "Do it. Be my guest. I inscribed that for you." And he just wouldn't have any of it. He said, "You know what? You work for us. We're the American citizens. We're the taxpayers." And he says, "It's my job as a journalist to get the truth." And he says, government works for the people, not the reverse, and other things. I mean, Goodall was just wonderful. I tried asking him a lot. I mean, Goodall's a guy who's not just an aviation expert, and he is an expert, but he's also an Area 51 expert. Knows Bob Lazar personally, has known Lazar personally for many, many years. Knows John Lear really, really well. They're buddies. And he knew Ben Rich personally. Ben Rich, of course, legendary head of Lockheed's Skunk Works, succeeded Kelly Johnson. Knew Kelly Johnson, Goodall, not as well, but he met him. Goodall is in this amazing position in life to have seen a lot, to have learned a lot. And so I really tried pushing him and asking him to get to provide an informed opinion, an informed judgment on the status of Black world technology. And it was the one thing where I tried several times, both in part 1 and part 2 of our talk. So I would encourage you to listen to both of them. He gives a lot, but he doesn't give everything. And it's not that he's holding back. I don't think he was holding anything back. But it became clear to me that there are certain limits as to what he actually knew for sure. So one thing I asked him about was the status of the TR-3B, the Black Triangle, the Black Manta. And particularly in part 2, I think that one was. And first of all, it took like a 10-minute segue. He was talking about something totally different. I had to steer him back. Jim Goodall talks about what he wants to talk about. This is one thing I learned. But he did eventually answer the question. And I think that the fact is he just didn't know, but I think he believes that the craft exists. Same with the story of Brad Sorensen and the ARV, the Alien Reproduction Vehicle, the Fluxliner, famous 1988 story. I'm sure many of you know about this. And is it true? Were we reverse engineering alien vehicles back in 1988 that had already by then successfully flown through the solar system on the power of the vacuum and all of this stuff? So I asked Goodall this, and a number of times I tried coming back to this. And he didn't really give me a straight answer. He didn't give me a precise answer that I think would be satisfying to everyone. But he ended up saying that he believes what Ben Rich told him on his deathbed, which was, Jim, what was the quote that I put in there? "We've been there, done that, whatever you're imagining, like Star Wars, Star Trek type stuff. We've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort." That was what Ben Rich talked to him about, and essentially was explicitly talking about Star Trek type technology, Star Wars type technology. So Goodall, on the basis of that, believes that in the classified world, we do have the ability basically to go from one end of this galaxy to another. And in fact, at one point, I can't remember if it was part 1 or part 2, he said that, I think at the end of the interview. It was kind of an amazing moment. The other great thing about Goodall is he was absolutely into doing an interview. He wanted this interview, and he's up for doing follow-up interviews with me, with other people as well. I think he just wants to get his word out there. But I have an open invite to interview Jim Goodall in the future, and I will definitely make use of it before much more time. He's a wealth of information. He's very forthcoming. And even if he doesn't know specifically about a particular thing, like you can see, he's got a very informed opinion about pretty much anything that has to do with aviation, aerospace, and UFOs. So he's worth coming back to. I was really lucky to get him to talk. He was easy and not easy at the same time to interview. Like, he was easy in the sense that there was a lot he wanted to talk about, but that's what made it a bit of a challenge, because I noticed he had certain things he really wanted to talk about. And when I tried on 1 or 2 occasions to steer him in a certain direction, I had to really work that theme. But he was quite amenable ultimately to to the things that I wanted to talk about as well. So it was very, very positive. I really was grateful for it. He's a great guy. And by the way, his attitude on Lazar is completely supportive. Completely supportive. Oh, and the key thing, this is kind of a shocking thing, and he had said this to me when I ran into him a few months ago at, what was it, Contact in the Desert, where he said this to me for the first time, and then he said it again in the interview, which was that he claims to have seen Bob Lazar's MIT diploma. And he said this to me for the first time back at in front of my little table at Contact in the Desert, and I was floored, absolutely floored. And I said, what? No, everyone's been talking about this. Stanton Friedman and everyone else has called Lazar a fraud, has talked about this lack of a diploma at MIT. And where have you been all this time? You know, I wasn't aware at all that Goodall had made any public statement about having seen Lazar's diploma. It would have saved us a little bit of, or I don't know if it would have solved the controversy, but it certainly would have been an important piece of evidence on Lazar's behalf. But anyway, he said it again in the interview, and I certainly stopped him and made him talk about that. And what he was saying this time, he was actually much more forceful when I saw him the first time, but he was pretty forceful this time. But he qualified his statement a little bit, if you listened carefully, which was that he was like pretty sure that he saw it. So I'm kind of certain that that was what it was. I don't think he looked super carefully at it, but he must have looked enough at it to have noted it. And this is twice now that he said this to me, that he saw Lazar's MIT diploma. I said, who else has seen this? And in the interview, he said Gene Huff, probably, who was Lazar's buddy back in the Nevada days at that time. Gene Huff was a realtor who was just happened to be a good friend of Lazar's. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he might have said George Knapp knew. But I'm a little surprised by that, because I've talked with George Knapp on a number of occasions about Lazar, and I do not remember George Knapp saying this to me. But I have to do a follow-up question. I'll do an interview with George Knapp. Wouldn't that be great? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, that's Goodall on Lazar. It was fascinating. Just absolutely wonderful. I love when people like Goodall or anyone else comes in and just stirs stuff up and really angers certain individuals in the field who have very strongly set opinions. I'm like, you know what? I don't have any skin in the game one way or the other on this one. But I like to see certain people get a little bit uncomfortable with statements like that. And Goodall, I mean, you cannot intimidate this guy, not at all. So a couple of other things in the works that I'll just mention here before I wrap this up. Trying to figure out how to put some of this. I was thinking before I went on here with you, but I've been getting a fair amount of confirmation over the last few weeks from different sources about government interest in UFOs, and also ditto about confirmation, I should say, about genuine artifacts and materials that seem to exist and seem to be truly anomalous. Beyond the bismuth magnesium piece that I've already talked about, that Hal Puthoff talked about, and that Linda Moulton Howe, I guess, curated for many years. Beyond that, there's more. Now, TTSA has talked about having more than just one piece. But I guess what I'll say is, it's been coming to me that these pieces are real and they are absolutely worthy of careful scientific attention, because they appear to have anomalous manufactured properties, I guess I could say, that do not appear to have been manufactured by anyone on Earth that we would know of. That's what's coming to me now. I haven't said this publicly anywhere, so I'm saying it to you for the first time. And I'm sure you're thinking, okay, well, spill it. Come on, Dolan, get it all out. And I'm sure that I will. You have to understand, I don't want to just repeat a rumor that comes to me from a person who is telling me something very much in confidence at the present time. But, I'm sure you realize, like, when anything like that does come to me, I am always thinking of a way that I feel is responsible by which I can get that information out. And I like to think that my instinct of holding things back has really saved me on a number of occasions over the years. And in fact, I know that it has. Like over 20 years, let's say 15 years, there have been more than one. There have been maybe a handful of occasions, 4 or 5 times, where information that seemed absolutely explosive has come to me. And I just decided something doesn't smell exactly right, or I can't really prove or even corroborate this. So I'm going to hold. And then it just turns out to go up in smoke. On one occasion in particular, and I really think it would have been just disastrous to have put some information out that I think would have turned out to be completely wrong, and it would have really hurt me and would have hurt the field. And that was, I don't know, a decade ago. So I wait. My attitude is I want to sit and I want to wait on things before I can really work with them in a public manner that is responsible. So, but the things that I'm getting now, like, I'm really quite confident about these things. And so the thing is, the key is to find a way to present the information responsibly and in a powerful way. And I don't want to harm the people who've come to me with information. And frankly, they're coming out. It's all coming out. Some of these people, I think, have connections with TTSA. Some of these people do not have connections with TTSA, but there's important things going on. I guess I would say things are percolating as far as I can tell. This is real. This technology is real. This phenomenon is real. In other words, real by beings that are not human. They are not human. There are beings, call them alien. Maybe they're possibly extraterrestrial. I'll say probably extraterrestrial. They're not us. They are here. They are interested in this world. They are interested in us. I had an interesting conversation with someone during this week about their possible interest in whales. Now, I don't know how to confirm that at this time, but at least one researcher felt very strongly about this. And it made me really think. Whales have massive brains. They're super intelligent. They've got their own communication system. They have lived on this planet for millions of years, much longer than we have. Yeah. If there's another intelligence that's able to come here on Earth, undoubtedly, they would find the cetaceans, that's whales and dolphins, to be of great interest. Those are highly intelligent creatures that just happen to live in the oceans. And that's an interesting twist to the UFO phenomenon, is it not? Like, we assume that they're here for us. And yeah, we're interesting. We do a lot. We can build really dangerous weapons, and we also have higher consciousness, and we've got things that are genuinely interesting. But the whales are interesting too. The dolphins are interesting too. And it's just something to think about. And here's one other thing: if you want to go full woo, so let's just do that. since I'm already going halfway down that road, let's go full woo, and just state that if there are things in the consciousness of a whale that enable it to do, let's say, remote view, let's say, have its own version of psychic phenomenon. Is that impossible? It might be entirely possible. It might be a survival function that they have, for all I know. I mean, maybe they don't seem to need it. I don't know. But what if they have it? They've got enormous brains. The brain might have a function in there. I've had my own little private theory, and I have no way to back this up scientifically, so forgive me on this one. But being aware that the human brain has shrunk by the size equivalent of a full tennis ball over the last 15,000 years, it has shrunk. What is it that we lost? Well, is it possible that we lost some ability that we would now consider psychic? It would surely have come in handy, you have to assume, to our Paleolithic ancestors, when you have got to hunt and gather, and you have to be completely aware of the environment around you at all times, like really aware of all the animals, all the birds, the migration patterns, the weather phenomena, like very aware, very in tune. And could that have included part of the brain? Could that brain have a psychic component, which once we had sedentary agriculture and cities and all of that, maybe was not as necessary for our survival, and so we lost it? So, and relating to whales or maybe dolphins, do they have something like that that would allow a civilization that has the ability of some kind of telepathy or some kind of higher consciousness? They might find the whales interesting. A new thought. I'm just tossing that one out there. Let's see what else I have here on the agenda. Oh, yeah, the observation with my daughter. It was really great. I enjoyed so much seeing her. She's a brilliant young lady now. She's 21. A lot of good things are happening for her. I'm very happy. And she brought her boyfriend over to meet us. This is like a new thing, right? I really like this guy. I liked him very much. He's a sharp guy. And he operates on her level, which is, I don't see this with every guy that she's ever brought back. So this one does. But here's the thing that I noticed. So they're both like very scientifically oriented. And he's got a lot of background in engineering. And we talked about a number of things that were interesting, but only once did we get into things like artificial intelligence, which he's kind of into, I think, and other future tech developments, and then 5G. And as those of you who know this website and or know anything that I'm interested in, I've talked about 5G in the last year. I find it very interesting. And to me, it's an absolute double-edged sword. And that other side of that blade is a dangerous one, because it means for any of the advances that you have with technology, you're losing privacy. Like, you are losing it. And I made this offhand comment about the loss of privacy. And Tracy and I just asked them both, it's like, what does your generation, pardon me, think about privacy? And it's interesting. I mean, I've talked with my daughter about this before. But what I find is that, like, young people, even smart young people, folks in their 20s, it's not really a major, like, catastrophic concern for them the way it is for older generations. And they both made that comment. Like, he said, look, I know this is something that older people are really concerned with, but he says, we don't really have time to worry about this. They are actually really worried about student debt, which, yeah, they got every reason to be worried about student debt. That's a huge, huge, huge problem. In other words, the implication is that they're just more worried about surviving than having all of their privacy. But it didn't elicit a strong emotion, like this whole lack of privacy, from either of them. It was more like this resigned to their fate kind of a situation. I mean, my daughter has grown up hearing her father talk about this. This is not like a new thing for me. You know, she's 21 now. She was 5 years old. She was hearing me, you know, rail about the increasing slice by slice loss of our rights and our, you know, from the before times, as I often call it. But yeah, the emotion is not there. The passion for privacy doesn't seem to be there. I wonder if this is an unusual thing or if this is the norm. I suspect it is the norm. I suspect it's the norm. This is now a generation that has grown up post 9/11. They've grown up post USA Patriot Act. They've grown up with social media without an expectation of privacy. And it's a bit, it makes me sad in a way. Like, it makes me just think, what's going to happen? Have we already gone past the point of no return? And I feel like we probably have gone past the point of no return, like in terms of fighting to reclaim our privacy. I was shopping earlier in the week with Tracy at one of the big box stores, and they had the big smart TVs out. Look, I'm perfectly happy with the TV that I've got, and it's off 95% of the day. And it's not a smart TV. It's a nice flat screen TV that does the job. It's got a decent picture on it. But, you know, when you walk by these 4K 55-inch amazing televisions, maybe especially if you're a guy, I don't know, maybe do we have a thing for that? But I find myself looking at them thinking, wow, I'd really love to have a TV like that. But then, of course, you know that all of them are smart TVs. All of them have got the ability to monitor you in ways that we're not always aware. So it made me think, like, how long am I going to go? I mean, one day my TV is going to break down. I'll have to get a new television. It's going to have to be a smart TV. And are there ways of disabling the smart features of the TV? And I did a quick search, and apparently there are ways to disable most of the smart features. I haven't really fully investigated this yet, and I don't know how effective that is, but I think you can disable some of it, maybe even a lot of it, maybe even most of it. I don't know. But here's the thing, like, how many of us are going to be addicted to the nice, convenient features that the smart TV offers us, including myself? Like, I'm not accepted from this. So am I going to be seduced by, I don't know what even the features are, to be honest with you. I haven't really looked into this. But once you have them, who likes giving them up? On my phone, on this little, I've got the Samsung Galaxy Note 9, right? It unlocks by your fingerprint on the back. It unlocks also by facial recognition. And the truth is, I use it like every day. I'll use the fingerprint, and sometimes the facial recognition right there, boom, it turns on for me. And I know, like, it's reading my data. It's convenient. It's easy. And it provides, at least from other people, I guess, security. Like, they're not going to hack my phone. Of course, someone else can hack my phone. Someone else who gets access to my facial recognition algorithm and my fingerprint, which is stored. Where is it stored? Who knows? Maybe it's not being stored outside my phone. Maybe the fingerprint isn't. I don't know. But there's all kinds of things on this. I mean, just watch any lecture by Edward Snowden on how your cell phone is monitoring you at all times. And I'm sure some of you don't have a smartphone. I'm sure there's some of you who do not. But I've got it. And, you know, we're slowly and surely inching our way forward into this future. Some of us with our fingernails dragging behind us, and others just racing ahead, but we're all being brought into it. I feel like this is the very, very beginning of a new thought process that perhaps next week should be able to share with you in a little more fleshed out detail. One thing that I'm doing, I think I mentioned this at the very end of November. Tracy and I are flying to Manchester, UK, and I think in a couple of, maybe in a week or two, maybe when we go, I'll tell you what I'm up to. But it's kind of a cool project. It's going to take me a week and a half to do, and it will involve a lot of video shooting. So I guess I'll leave it at that. It's a lot of work, but I'm believing it will be worth it. And so I'm looking forward to doing it. But while we are there, and I think this will be on December 7th, which is, for those Americans who remember, the day of Pearl Harbor, on that day in Manchester will be Tracy, myself, and Steve Mera, who's out there, who's a very interesting investigator in his own right, will be hosting a gathering, I guess you could say, for people who are able to attend. I think it's just £20 UK. It's pretty cheap. And his group is organizing this, and I'll be doing, I think, 90 minutes or maybe 2 hours of talking. Steve and Tracy are doing a half hour each, and you get to meet, hang out. It should be fun. But mostly what I'm doing is some video shooting, and I'll tell you more about that as we move ahead with it. For this week, expect the Chris Bledsoe interview part 1 to be uploaded. I'll be recording parts 2 and hopefully 3 with him later this week. Expect the JFK session part 3 at the very least. If I can get a part 4 out this week, I will do it. And probably a couple of off the cuffs. I'm expecting Tracy's going to be recording me a bit, and I'm going to try, I think, to get to an answer forum to get some of your questions. A couple of them have come in through email. We'll go through those, and I think I'll create an answer forum, if nothing else, audio for this week. And I think that's all I can think of right now. So I hope this video finds you well. There's a number of you that I'm actually thinking of personally. There's one of you who I know has been going through a rough emotional time, and I'm going to write to you personally. I think I'm going to send you a note this evening. I appreciate having you in this site for all kinds of reasons. I have to tell you, I appreciate your support. This is the only way that I can engage in this phenomenon on a full-time basis. That's the reality of it. Beyond that, I appreciate this community. I appreciate what you have provided for me in terms of my research, because many of you have provided a lot of information to me privately, and I am incredibly grateful for that. And even if you haven't provided me with research information, the fact that you are part of this community means a great deal to me. When I started researching this 25 years ago, I can tell you I was probably like many of you. I felt completely isolated. And in fact, for the very first entire year, for 12 months, I told no one, not even my wife, not anybody, that I was researching UFOs. It was a truly secret passion. And then over time, I started telling a very few people about what I was researching. And then finally my first book came out, and I began talking to, even then, I wasn't like fully out there all the time talking about this. Like it's taken a long time to build a sense of community. Now we're in an era here in 2019 going into 2020. It's very different from 1995. It feels very different culturally than 1995, 25 years ago. Wow. It's easier, at least it seems to me, easier for us in general to talk about this subject with family and friends. I realize it's not for all of you, but I think that things are changing. And I I don't know if I would have felt this way even 10 years ago. Even when I wrote After Disclosure, I'm not sure that I fully believed that I would really live to see big changes. I mean, when we wrote that book, Bryce and I I believed it intellectually. I thought, okay, here's where we're at technologically, here's where we are at politically and socially, and these are the things in motion. And it seems to me that this is likely to happen. But I couldn't feel it. I couldn't viscerally sense it. I can now. Like, I really can feel, if that means anything, that we're in a different place than we were a few years ago. And that not that some utopian disclosure is going to happen. I don't know exactly how it's going to happen. It probably will be a messy process. And it probably won't be entirely satisfying process. Like, there's going to be things that are left out, self-serving elements that will definitely come to the fore. But this is the thing about whether it's like revolution or any kind of dramatic change. It never turns out the way the idealists in the beginning who are starting this process envision it. Never does. And it doesn't turn out and the reason is because there's all of these different interests that are involved. And not all of those interests are concerned with the truth. Some of them are, some of them are not. But there are a lot of people with a role to play, I think. And I think in the long run, the truth will out. I believe that. But that's the long run. And I think in the short and medium term, which is our term for all of us, really, I think there'll be some very big sighs of relief, and certain types of information will probably find their way out. This is just me hypothesizing, but I feel it now. But I don't think it'll be a completely satisfying process. I think that there's going to be a messiness to it. But the fact is that I can feel that things are different now than they were even a decade ago, even 5 years ago. It's amazing. So, okay, well, I guess that's all I've got for you for tonight. I hope this has been enjoyable for you. It's always good to get together with you, and I'll catch you next time. Later.